Hello, welcome to More Yoga with me, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you're doing well and that if you're not, that this will help you feel even just a little bit better physically, mentally, emotionally. They're all combined. I thought today what we would do is get into the wrists a little bit. So forearms and wrist mobility, but also quadriceps. Right? So the front of the thigh and the IT band. Now the IT band attaches the iliacus to the tibia. Don't really need to know that so much, but it's this thick band of fascia on the outer thigh. And it can feel tight sometimes, even though fascia doesn't really get tight. It can get knotted or sticky, but it's the muscles that attach the IT band really that you're feeling the tension. However, we can get into those muscles that attach to it and then it'll feel like we're releasing through the IT band. Anyway, you don't really need to know that unless you're interested. Then, DM me. We'll talk some more about anatomy. So, um, let's start lying down if you're comfortable there. If you'd prefer to stay seated, then by all means, stay seated. Essentially, just find a comfortable position for yourself for the first couple minutes of settling, right? Depending on how your day has been, maybe you need to wiggle it out a little bit or maybe feeling a little bit fidgety. That's cool. Get rid of those movements. Maybe you're like, totally still already. Doesn't really matter. Just take your time to settle on the mat. Maybe a loop of your shoulder blades toward each other so the heart can open up a bit more. And then once you feel settled, for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose and exhale, sigh your breath away. Couple more. And then continue breathing however you need to, whether it's in and out through your nose or your mouth. Notice how your breath is flowing. Maybe it feels a little bit sticky or choppy, in which case you could gently try to lengthen through those parts of the breath just to smooth it out a little bit more. Maybe your breath feels really smooth and spacious today, in which case acknowledge that for whatever it's worth. Maybe you notice the gentle rise and fall of your belly or chest. Or movement elsewhere in your body, whether it's because of your breath, or maybe you feel your pulse. Last few moments here. And then when you're ready, start to bring a little bit of movement back to your body, whatever way feels best. For you to wake up, could be a little wiggle of the fingertips or toes, little rock of your head from side to side, or maybe a full body morning stretch. Reaching fingertips and toes in opposite directions from each other. And then draw your knees in toward your chest or your belly and take a little rock from side to side. Just taking this time to massage out the spine and the pelvis. All right, and then bring your feet to the floor. And we're going to roll over onto our bellies. Now, if for whatever reason being on your belly doesn't feel good, you can do this whole next section of quad stretches from your side. You'll just have to do one side and then switch to the other. If you're comfortable joining me on your belly, then go ahead, roll all the way forward. And then take a little wiggle of the hips from side to side. And just releasing any tension or body parts that, that might not feel necessarily super great squashed up against the floor. All right, untuck your toes and then press the tops of the feet into the floor, so much so you feel your kneecaps lift away from the floor. Send your tailbone to the back wall, belly button to spine, and then reach your left arm in front of you. You could stay on your palm or come to fingertips, whatever feels best here. And then kick your right heel to your bum. Okay, so left leg, top of the foot presses into the floor. Right leg, now the heel is kicked into towards the bum for a quad stretch. You could grab the outside edge of the foot or the inside edge of the foot. Inside edge is cool because it means it's pretty much impossible to round forward through the shoulder, but wherever feels most comfortable for you. Hug the heel in towards the bum, and then maybe pull a little bit more with your arm. As much as you're doing that, try to keep your knee in neutral so it's not winging out to the side, especially if you're on your sides doing this instead of your belly. Make sure the knee isn't lifted up to the sky. Press your right hip bone into the floor a little bit more. If you're on your side, press it forward. The knee will lift back slightly as you do this. Couple more breaths here. Now, if you're getting a lot of sensation through those right quadriceps, you could stay here. Or if, you're feeling a little bit more lengthy today, then you could start to kick the right foot away from you and come up into half bow pose. But you don't have to. I'm going to stay in the quad stretch because it's feeling really good for me. Still really active through the left side of the body. And then slowly, gently release. Shake out the legs a little bit. You might do a little windshield wiper here. And then let's come back to center. If you'd be on your side, roll to the other side. And then let's get set up. So right leg, top of the foot presses into the floor. Right arm reaches in front of you, palm down or fingertips lifted. And then from here, kick your left heel toward your bum. Grab the outside or inside edge with that left foot. And then start to hug the heel toward your bum a little bit more. Keep the right leg super active. You might seem weird because we're actually using the quadriceps to keep the legs still after just releasing them, but it helps protect the low back here. Maybe you think of pressing your hip bone into the floor a little bit more to lift that left knee up slightly, or pressing it forward if you're on your side. Keep the knee from winging out to the side. Maybe you stay here, particularly if you're getting a lot of tension, a lot of sensation, or you can kick the foot back, coming into half bow, really squeeze the bum. But again, I'm going to stay down in the quadricep stretch. Last couple breaths here. And then slowly, gently release your legs. Shake out the hips. Little windshield wiper of the legs. And then make your way to hands and knees. Take your time. You can bring the hands underneath your shoulders and just press yourself up. If you're on your side, join us here. So hands nice and wide, outer shoulder width apart or wider, toes tucked or untucked, fingers spread nice and wide. Let's start to move through cat and cow. Inhale, lift the tailbone, hollow through the lower back, broaden through the collarbones. Exhale, round through the spine. Really press the floor away from you. Inhale into cow. exhale, round into cat. So a few more of these undulations. Wherever you need to go. Maybe there's a little wiggle that would feel good here, or some barrel rolls through the chest. Just moving however you need to get into your body today. My low back is feeling a bit tight, so when I round into cat, I'm going to send my hips back towards my heels. But keep moving. All right, come back to center. I'm going to turn to face you. You can just stay where you are. Shake out the hands or the wrists. You could be back on your heels if you want to. You could do a little tennis players stretch. I keep trying to go one direction then the other, but it's really hard for me to do the opposite direction. Shake out the wrists and then come back to hands and knees. All right, so start to turn your fingertips out. Depending on how your bones attach to each other, you might only go a little bit. Maybe you start to turn them around a little bit more. Maybe they turn around all the way so the fingertips point back, right? It doesn't really matter. Just don't go so far that they're really getting into hyperextension here. Now make sure there's a little bend in the elbows, and then just play here with circles, half circles, rocking side to side. Even if your fingertips, like mine, go all the way back, maybe you play here with the fingertips out to the side. Maybe you get more sensation that way. Okay, go where you need to go. Maybe play with bending the elbows a little bit more. Really getting into the fronts of those wrists, or even a little cat and cow here. And then slowly, gently come back to center. Take the time to shake out the wrists, shake out the hands. Okay, and then now we're going to go on to the backs of the hands. So come forward, and then coming onto the backs of the hands, point the fingertips in towards each other. Now this could be quite uncomfortable, so you can send weight further back towards your hips or keep the elbows bent. And then even here, let's rock a little bit side to side or do circles, really getting into the forearms, right? The backs of the wrists, you might bend your elbows even more and come down and then up onto fists. Just getting a little bit more mobility. One side might feel way tighter than the other, totally normal. And then slowly, gently come back to center, shake them all out. And then do a little rub on one forearm and then the other. Just releasing the radialis. All right, come back to hands and knees. This time come up onto fingertips. Now, I'm on hardwood. This is actually going to be a little bit more effective if your fingertips are on your mat because it's stickier, it's grippier. It's just hard for me to find space. So imagine my fingertips are on my mat. So if you can, get yours on your mat. A little draw of belly button to spine. And then imagine that you have claws, that you're a cat. Start clawing the floor. Doesn't matter what side you start with. Right, really flick the fingers toward each other. There should be a lot of force going into this, right? If you're on the mat, it's not just la la la, right? Feel them flicking toward each other. And then pause, other side. Right, starting to just fire up the forearms because they help protect your wrists anytime you're bearing weight. Maybe do both at the same time. Okay, and then pause here. Again, maybe you're on hardwood, maybe on your mat. It doesn't really matter. We're going to start to bring the palms down toward the floor, but the whole time hugging the hands or the fingertips towards the center. So it's like they're being forced to the floor, even though your fingers don't want them to go that way. And then feel that as you're on your palms. Those fingertips really gripping into the mat, even hugging back towards each other. That's the level of activation that you really ideally want anytime you're bearing weight on your hands. It helps protect your wrists. Anyway, shake it out. Let it all go. All right. We're going to do a little bit of single leg kneeling stuff now. So if you have some padding, bring it underneath your left knee. If you have blocks, gather them up. And on your inhale, step or sweep that right leg forward. All right, half kneeling. Whew, that feels good. Taking a little break from those hands, those wrists. Hug the legs toward each other. Squeeze the bum on the back leg. Belly bend to spine, shoulder blades on your back, maintaining all that, and then shift into the front knee. Your back toes could be tucked or untucked, but I really want you to squeeze the bum on the back leg. So really getting into the hip flexors, right, the front of the hip. Why are we doing this, you might ask? Well, one of the quadriceps muscles, the rectus femoris, I believe, anyway, crosses the hip, acts as a hip flexor as well as an extensor of the knee. So squeeze the bum a little bit more, right? We're getting into the quads. That's the way to do it anyway. Okay, back out of the hips a little bit. I'm going to turn to face a different direction so you can see where we are headed. From here, I want you to bring both hands inside your front foot. Heel and toe it out wider and on an angle, so your toes could be off the top edge of your mat. And then allow the hips to sink a little bit. So option to stay here, just hugging the legs toward each other, or maybe you join me in a bit of a quadricep stretch. If so, take your left hand out a little bit wider, maybe on an angle. If you have a block, this can be a really great place because it'll give you a lot more space to get into this. As the hips sink forward, maybe you press the right thigh forward. Maybe you bend that back leg and hug the heel in toward the bum. Now, if you get a hamstring cramp while you're doing this, don't worry. It happens to everybody. And then squeeze the bum, press the hips forward. Now, the more that you're able to hug that heel in toward your bum, the more you're going to get into the quads. Right? If you press it away, you're going to get a little bit more into a back bend. Make sure that you're not right up on your kneecap, though, right? The hips are forward. You're kind of on that back thigh. And if you have the foot, gently release it. Bring both hands back to the center. And then start to shift your hips back as you extend through the front leg for half splits. Now the leg is probably out a little bit wide, so you can heel and toe it in and bring it into center, or into neutral rather. Wrap the left hip forward, draw the right hip back. So hamstring stretch, right? Hands could be on hips. If you have a wall that you want to hold on to, you can use a wall. Maybe you have blocks or even a coffee table. Maybe your fingertips naturally come to the floor. If so, that's fine. Go wherever you need to go. I like using blocks. It just gives me a little bit more length through my spine. Peel those front toes back toward your face even more, getting into the calves as well as the hamstrings. Now, this is where it can get a little bit wobbly, a little bit shaky as we start to get into the IT band, or the muscles that attach the IT band. So bend the front knee a little bit, and then heel and toe it over to the left. Now I know if your only support is hands on hips, it's super wobbly. So maybe find a wall or blocks, and then hinge at the hips. Really think of wrapping that front hip back. So it's going to feel like you're dragging that front heel back toward you, but you're also going to feel this a lot on the outer right thigh. TFL in particular, the tension fascia lati. Oh, and the muscles that attach to the IT band. Last couple breaths here. And then slowly back out of the hips a little bit, bend the front knee, heel and toe it back into neutral. And then step back, hands and knees. Little wiggle, shake, or cat and cow. And then you might stay here for a couple breaths or rest in child's pose if you wish, or just in a kneeling position, I want you to just notice whatever you notice from one side to the other. Feel whatever you feel. All right, slowly bring yourself back up, hands and knees. If you're using padding, then bring it underneath your right knee. And then inhale, step or sweep the left leg forward. Right, back out of the hips to start with. Hug the legs toward each other. Really squeeze the bum on that back leg. Belly bend to spine, shoulder blades on the back, maintaining all that. Then shift into that front knee. Right, so those back toes could be tucked or untucked, but really squeeze the bum on that back leg. So nice active release for the hip flexors, maybe even a little bit for the quadriceps here. Super normal, in fact, actually, to feel it down the tops of the thighs, particularly if you've been doing a lot of strength work. My runners, my cyclists, this will feel quite nice. Well, fitness nice. Okay, back out of the hips a little bit. Bring both hands inside your front foot. Heel and toe the front foot out wide and on an angle. So toes off the edge of the mat. Again, option to stay here in the more neutral position. Try not to just hang out at the bottom. So hug the legs back toward each other a little bit. Or maybe you take your right hand out wider or up on a block. Bring the left hand to that front thigh. Option to stay here. Just pressing it forward slightly. Or maybe you reach around with the left hand for the grab of the back foot. Now again, you can push it away, getting more into the chest and shoulder, or, oh, that's tight for me today, start to hug the heel in toward the bum a little bit more, getting more of a quadriceps stretch. That front knee can wing out to the side, or the sole of the foot can stay stable. Again, make sure you're not up on the kneecaps. So let the hips sink forward, come onto the thigh bone. And if you have the back foot, gently release it. Bring your hands back down again. Maybe, actually, let's try heel and toe that front foot back into neutral first, and then shift your hips back as you extend through the front leg for your half splits. Now again, you might be up high, hands on hips, or on the wall, or hands on blocks. Make sure this front knee isn't hyperextending though, right? Little micro bend or even a deep bend. Wrap the right hip forward, draw the left hip back, and then peel those front toes back toward your face even more. So getting a little bit into the hamstrings first, probably the calf muscles as well, particularly the more you draw those toes back toward your face. Last couple breaths here. Okay, I know this is going to start to get wobbly or shaky, but back out of the stretch a little bit. Heel and toe the front foot over to the right. Come back onto that heel, but then really wrap that left hip back. Peel those front toes back toward your face. Getting now into the sensation of releasing that outer thigh. One side might feel way tighter than the other. That's totally normal. Maybe both sides feel equally tight. Also totally normal. Try to keep the spine long though, rather than rounding. Just for these muscles, or this muscle group, it just works a little bit better that way. Keep wrapping the outer left hip back. Last breath here. Okay, back out of the hips. Bend the front knee, heel and toe it back into center, and then come on to hands and knees. Whew. Little wiggle or shake or cat and cow. And then let's take the knees wide and send your hips back into child's pose. Bow forward. You could always prop your hands underneath your forehead or a pillow underneath your torso. Coming as low or staying as high as you need to. Couple more breaths here. And then slowly start to press yourself back up, hands and knees. Little wiggle or shake or cat and cow. Shift your hips on one side, swing your legs forward, and then make your way down onto your back. Whether you just use your hands to come down or maybe you do a Pilates style roll down. Once you're on your back, draw your knees into your chest. Take a little rock from side to side. Let's end with a twist. So right arm goes out to the side. Maybe you shift your hips right a little bit to start with. And then exhale, lower the legs to the left. Maybe take a little bit more gentle of a variation today if you wish. Let the feet relax to the floor. Breath slow and sweet. And then on your next inhale, return to center. Reset your pelvis and your spine. Maybe the hips shift left a little bit. Exhale, lower the knees to the right. Get as gentle or as deep of a twist as you need. Allowing your breath to settle. Allowing the heart rate to settle. It's not really allowing those things to happen. It's allowing your body to relax enough that those things can happen. On your inhale, return to center. And then start to make your way into your final resting pose. Whether it's flat on your back, legs bent, or straight in Shavasana. Maybe you choose to rest on your side or in child's pose or in a seated meditation. Legs up the wall might feel really nice after all of that work that we did today. Wherever you need to go. And as always, there's no rush to get there. But once you have found your pose of rest, for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose. Exhale, sigh your breath away. 2 more. And then notice if you're holding any last muscle gripping or tension. If so, try to release it. Let go of any last breath control that you might have. So return to your natural breath. And take the time or take a moment to thank yourself for coming here today. Coming to your mat, and giving yourself this time to move and to breathe. And deep gratitude for your wonderful body for moving and breathing for you. Stay here longer if you can, 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.